The Nintendo e-reader was an accessory originally released in late 2001 for the Game Boy Advance. It had the function of reading e-reader cards. The cards stored data and dot codes on their sides, which could then be read by the system to unlock extra content. There were three main methods of using the cards: adding content to GBA games, adding content to GameCube games, and unlocking standalone games which were entirely stored on the cards and didn't require any companion games. The cards themselves, if they weren't standalone, often added exclusive content to their companion games, such as extra levels for Super Mario 3, more trainers to battle in Pokémon, and more ways to customize your town in Animal Crossing. But if they were standalone, they basically functioned as any regular game. These were usually NES games, or Game & Watch styled games. While on paper the idea of the e-reader was great, when executed there were many problems which significantly limited the e-reader's potential popularity, and those problems will be the focus of this video. First, the setups were very awkward. When adding content to a GBA game, the data needs to be received while the game is running. And since the e-reader functions through the game card slot, you can't use both the game and the e-reader at the same time. So in order to actually use the thing, you need an extra Game Boy Advance and a link cable. And when using the e-reader with the GameCube, it can only function with a GameCube to GBA link cable connected to a GBA that's using the e-reader. So if you didn't already own a GBA, you'd have to find one, along with a link cable, just to add small bonuses to GameCube games. Secondly, the cards themselves didn't store much data. This wasn't a problem for games that add content to already existing games, since most of the necessary data is already on the game, but for standalone e-reader games, they essentially had to store everything a normal game would have, except in dot codes. This limitation forced the standalone games to be more simple, in order to fit on a reasonable amount of cards. Even then, early NES games could require 10 swipes from 5 different cards. This also meant that if you lost any card from the set, you couldn't play the game at all. Thirdly, and most importantly, there wasn't very much variety in the library. The majority of the standalone games were just NES games, which didn't offer anything new. And most expansions just added more content which was very similar to what was already found in the game, like furniture in Animal Crossing and trainer battles in Pokémon. And while some cards offered something original, like the extra levels in Super Mario Bros. 3, which each feature completely original mechanics, and the Eon ticket in Pokémon, which can take you to a special location, these types of cards were the exception. That's a lot of things to fix, so let's start from the top. To start, the e-reader is now a standalone device that runs on its own rechargeable battery. This allows it to be used with GBA games without requiring an extra GBA, and GameCube games without a new GBA. This also makes the e-reader more of a universal device and less confusing to use. Next, every e-reader also comes packaged with the special link cable that functions with both the GBA and the GameCube. It's essentially a GBA link cable with an adapter that can connect to a GameCube. These changes were implemented to eliminate any additional purchases outside the games and the cards, and remove any uncertainty about what accessories are required to play any given game. It's just the e-reader and the link cable. Now the cards themselves. For the standalone games, instead of having many individual cards to play the game, the data is instead put on one long card with folds that can condense to the size of one card. This means you can't ever lose one card and have the entire set made worthless. Also, this means you only need to scan the card twice, rather than up to 10 times, making the process of playing the games far less time-consuming. The system also allows for much larger games to be comfortably stored on the cards. Finally, the games themselves. I'd like to start by expanding on several one-off cards, starting with Game & Watch Manhole and Air Hockey cards. They're both now a part of their own series, the Game & Watch series and the Sports Mix series respectively. They both contain 6 cards, which are all their own separate minigames. Here's an example of what cards would be found in these packs. In Sports Mix Series 1, we have air hockey, darts, dodgeball, basketball, snowboarding, and bowling. And in Game & Watch Series 1, we have manhole, fire, ball, judge, helmet, and chef. I also have a couple ideas for new expansion type cards. First is the Wario Land crossover card, which unlocks an extra area that's Zelda themed. There are 4 levels, each a part of a different section of Hyrule: Kokiri Forest, Hyrule Field, Death Mountain, and Lake Hylia. In these levels you can also find enemies from the Zelda series, like Octoroks, Tektites, and Levers 2, ultimately ending in an epic battle with Ganon. And next there's a Super Mario Bros. Level pack for Sonic Advance 2, containing 4 levels based on Super Mario 1, 2, 3, and World, with enemies and obstacles being used from the level's corresponding game. Now a brand new standalone game series, Nintendo Pinball Arcade. Each pack comes with 3 cards representing 3 pinball tables, which resemble various Nintendo series. Each card has 2 dot codes. The one on the left is on every single Nintendo pinball card, while the one on the right is unique to each card, and holds the data for the pinball table. So here's how you use them. With the e-reader connected to the Game Boy Advance, scan the universal dot code on the left of any card. Then scan up to 10 pinball tables and play the game. When the game runs, the beginning pinball table is determined by which card you scanned first. You control the paddles with L and R, and as soon as you press one of the triggers, the game starts. It essentially functions like any other pinball game, except on both sides of the pinball table, there are pockets which change the board to another one that was scanned. The order that the boards appear in is determined by the order they're scanned in. So if you scan the Mario card first, and then scan the Metroid card, the game starts on the Mario table, but the pocket to the right leads to the Metroid table. And once you reach the last of the pinball tables, it just loops around to where the game was started. So that's my idea for an improved e-reader. More effective hardware and design, as well as more compelling software which makes greater use of the e-reader's strengths.